The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
From Mallory Square in Key West to the Governor's Mansion in Tallahassee and all points beyond, you're listening to the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com, your source for all things related to the craft beer community in the Sunshine State. And now your host, Dave Butler.
Good morning, or afternoon, or evening, or whatever the case may be. This is another episode of the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com. Dave, your host and author. And we're going to be doing a little bit of jumping around over the next couple of episodes. I know this is nothing completely new to you, dear listeners, so I promise you, we got some great stuff that's coming up. Before we get into it, I would like to make sure that you are liking and subscribing to this podcast. If you are listening on the podcasting app of your choice and you have not done so, make sure to subscribe so that you get our newest episodes when they release. Obviously, we want you to go ahead and leave a nice big review if you can. Also, make sure to follow us on social media. We're at Florida Beer Blog on Instagram and Twitter, at FL Beer Blog on the Facebook. We are also available at FloridaBeerPodcast.com. FloridaBeerBlog.com is obviously the sister site, where you will actually be able to read reviews on some of the beers that we mentioned, including the beer that I had during today's interview. We are also a proud member of the Florida Podcast Network, and you can find them at FloridaPodcastNetwork.com, and you can hear some of our news from our sister podcasts, including Florida Men News, who was gracious enough to give us some interviews from Bonita last episode. This episode, we are heading to Hialeah. Not exactly a place that I figured I would go to in search of craft beer, but they have two breweries there. We sat down with both of them. You'll be hearing about the other one a little bit later on in a few episodes. But for today, we're going to what is definitely one of the biggest breweries in Miami-Dade County. That is Unbranded Brewing. Deep in the heart of Hialeah's burgeoning arts district, they have an absolutely massive space right up against the railroad used for the Bright Line. And we, being producer Steve and myself, were able to sit down with the founder and brewer, Zach Swanson. Good old Texas boy. So we're going to chat with him to learn a little bit more about Unbranded, understand how a Texas boy came to open up a brewery in Hialeah, give you a little bit more insight on the name and some of the absolutely killer beers and barbecue that they had there. So enjoy when I finally managed to get the two of them to stop talking about whatever Dark Souls game they were talking about at the time and actually start chatting about beer. Enjoy.
As soon as I said Dark Souls, he said no.
I'm out. I'm out. Sorry. I'm out.
Games are like that. Very divisive.
Yeah, but the thing is, I want a game that is enjoyable.
It is
and
enjoyable.
I want a story. And I want to be able to complete the story.
George R.R. Martin wrote the story.
Yeah, whatever. See, that's why
I get when you finally beat that boss, though, is like,
yeah, but
it's
I
the
won't.
300 tries before that just destroys your life.
And I can't really play it for most of my day because I don't want the 6-year-old to come in and see some of the things that are on there,
crying.
Which is why I play Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney.
All right,
because that's what I do. I'm going to start off with the very obvious question as to how did a Texas boy end up opening a brewery in Hialeah, of all places? So there's a lot there.
Right.
Go ahead and unpack that suitcase.
So I've been a home brewer since I was back in college. I decided to, saw some Sam Adams commercial about like a home brew competition they were doing, and I was like, oh, you can make beer at home? Awesome. So I started making home brew then, and I've been doing it consistently through my whole life. It's been a very consistent hobby. And basically, I was on an academic career path. So philosophy major in college, got my master's degree, then came to Miami to get my PhD in philosophy at University of Miami. And basically, by the end of that PhD program, I had kind of gotten disenchanted with the whole world of academia, and I decided that I'd rather do something fun like open a brewery. And my dad is a successful entrepreneur, so he contributed all the startup capital for this venture. And, he was pretty excited about opening another business. And he was like, all right, yeah, I love beer. And, you know how to make it. So let's do it.
Well, I would say in terms of your dad's portfolio, I would assume that a brewery is a very different beast than a standard.
Yeah, his business is really bizarre. It's like a business form. He sells business products. So he sells products to businesses like supplies and forms and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, he's not really involved in day-to-day operations. That's me. But, like I said, as far as capital and just being excited about opening a brewery, he was definitely down.
How difficult was it because I would assume that he's still in Texas.
Yeah.
Where in Texas, by the way? Houston.
Yeah.
All right. I would assume that opening up a business, a non-alcohol based business in Houston, and opening up an alcohol production facility in Miami-Dade County are very different.
Yeah.
For both you and he,
yeah.
What was that learning curve like?
Jeez. Basically, you learn that civil servants aren't exactly as helpful as you thought they might be. Even if they say they're going to be very helpful and grease the wheels and do everything they can to help you out. That was basically the big learning curve. I mean, other than that, I just did my research and, found out how to apply to the TTB. I had a consultant help me out a little bit who'd opened breweries before, so he kind of bridged the gap there as well. But yeah, no, the learning curve was mainly just dealing with the city and all the red tape. And I mean, pretty common thing, I think, for people to say, but it's definitely true.
Were you able to be helped by a number of the people? Because I guess let's start with Hialeah. Obviously craft beer is not exactly what people think of when people think of alcohol in Miami-Dade County at all.
Absolutely.
And Hialeah, most definitely not.
Yeah. So,
why Hialeah to begin with?
So why Hialeah? Well, there's a lot of reasons I chose Hialeah, actually. So first of all, it's a city of 250,000 people, and they don't really have like hip, trendy spots to go to, right? And you've got these second, third generation Cuban immigrants that, like to go to Wynwood to party or like South Beach to party or something like that, but they don't have a place in Hialeah to go to that's, like I said, kind of, new age or, hip or trendy. So I was like, okay, then there's, a vacuum here that we can, fill with a nice brewery. They started an arts district called the Leah Arts District, which we're in right now. And I was just like, okay, so there's a building available in this burgeoning young arts. Also, people from Hialeah tend to have a lot of civic pride. Like they really feel like they're from Hialeah. They wear it on their shoulder, nobody's like that about Coral Gables or, Coconut. They're not like, yo, I'm from Coral Gables, bro. Like, nobody really is like that, but people are like that in Hialeah. So all of that combined with the fact that, well, to be honest, warehouse space is pretty cheap here. I was just like, okay, great. There's a city with a bunch of people that don't have like a, hip trendy place, who have a whole lot of civic pride. Craft breweries do well in those cities. So I was like, and everybody's got like an aunt or an uncle or a grandma or something in Hialeah. So
that's funny.
Like, yeah.
So I guess, were you able to get a lot of help from the other breweries in the county that had already opened up?
I definitely talked to several of the brewers at different breweries. And so, like, I definitely want to say Vesa Sur, Wynwood, and at the time, Concrete Beach, now Dogfish Head, they all helped me out. And then Eddie from MIA, he really, really helped out a lot too.
Gotcha. But that's only for the county. Hialeah, I would assume that you're Hialeah's first brewery.
Yes, we are.
What was the city like when you approached them about this project?
The city was excited about it, and the mayor at the time really wanted to do everything he could to greenlight it and move it along. The department heads, it was kind of 50-50. Ran into some roadblocks with some department heads. Other department heads were really great, very, reasonable and good to work with kind of people, but yeah, it was definitely a learning curve for them too, because they've never had a brewery before, so they didn't quite know what to expect.
Gotcha. So And I know, Steve, you were loving the building that they've got here.
Yes, the warehouse itself is just a gorgeous, massive warehouse. How many square feet did you say it was?
32,000 total.
Jeez.
Yeah.
It's just huge. And it's unlimited space to do pretty much everything you can imagine for a brewery and then some.
And what was it? Because this was meant to be something, since we are literally, I could throw a ball onto the train tracks and I have the worst arm ever. It's literally right here.
Originally, back when it was built in the 50s, it was an aluminum extruder, so they manufactured aluminum here. Since then, it's had numerous other lives. I know there was an auto body place. There was actually a landing gear technology company. Yeah, exactly. We still get their mail sometimes. Yeah, there was a whole bunch of sawdust in here when I got the building, so I'm assuming there was also some kind of cabinetry or millwork being done here.
And so you're here. You've got the capital. You've got the interest. We've got a building. We need a name. And there's a lot of cattle imagery, I guess, in your imagery and your word mark and whatnot.
The reason we're called Unbranded Brewing Company is I have this fun little bit of family history. I guess I lucked out in that department. But so I have this ancestor, my great-great-great-great-grandfather. His name was Samuel Augustus Maverick. And he actually made...
Is that his real name?
That is his real name. And he actually made the word Maverick a word in the English language.
Seriously?
Yeah. So what he did is...
And not Tom Cruise. It was him.
Yeah. He just stole it shamelessly. No, so basically what Samuel Maverick did is he did not brand his cattle, and he was like, all the unbranded cattle, this is where we get unbranded from, everybody will know that they're mine. So this is like 1830s, 1840s. Everybody started calling unbranded cattle Mavericks because they were like, oh, it's a Maverick cow. And then eventually anybody that did, weird stuff like that Samuel Maverick guy, going against the grain, you're just being a Maverick. So that's actually how the word Maverick became a word in the English language and why we're called Unbranded and why the, U has the horns on it and all that stuff, because he's a Maverick.
Gotcha. How difficult was craft beer in general and your particular image, style, company in particular? How difficult was that to sell to Hialeah as a community, as a civic entity?
Yeah, I think the main challenge with Hialeah and getting people to try craft beer in Hialeah is that they have kind of the basic conception of, they either drink like Presidente or Corona or something like that.
I was going to mention Presidente. My favorite group, Gente de Zona, just filmed the video up the street a couple many years ago. But you watch the video and it's all Presidente.
Right, and then there is some extent to which they non-light lagers, but they associate it all with being dark beer and strong beer, right? They're not used to a dry stout or something like that, a light bodied dark beer or anything in between. Not really know what hoppiness is or anything like that. So mainly that's why, our core flagship is American Light Lagers, just to get people in the door, use it as a gateway beer, and then try and educate, the customer about, hey, well, here's something else. Have you ever had a sour beer? Have you ever had an IPA? Have you ever had
And I was going to mention that because the American Light Lager, it just in terms of the visual presentation, is very different from literally everything else that you have. Because I'm taking a look behind your bar. You've got a huge array of cans. Most of them have that sort of urban graffiti art style that we see right outside the windows. Hialeah Light looks like something that you got from the local history museum.
Yeah.
And was that intentional to sort of be that gateway into Unbranded for your community?
Yeah. Our brand image coordinator, as he likes to call himself, Javi, that was Javi's idea. There's some arches that are kind of like right at one of the entry points to Hialeah, and that's what's featured on that can. And yeah, he kind of wanted to make it look a little retro and whatnot, and that way it'd be a little bit more approachable rather than some, like you said, like weird urban graffiti can, sitting on the shelves here in Hialeah and probably wouldn't move as well. So
I was going to say, has that worked with the community?
Yeah, no, Hialeah Light's our top seller, so it's definitely moving and people enjoy it. I'd say it's probably about 40% of our production right now. It's just Hialeah Light. We have a 160 barrel tank that we just constantly just flip with Hialeah Light. That's it,
And that's not just distribution, but here in the tap room as well, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and on draft and restaurants and stuff like that too. But yeah.
So you've got these core beers. How much of this, when it comes to the beers that you're making, how much of this is coming from your interests and your, I guess, Houston background, and how much of this is trying to adhere to and celebrate the tastes and the cultures here in Hialeah?
Really, the only way I think the kind of Texas roots come through is, well, obviously in our name, and then the fact that we do Texas style barbecue, serve brisket and pulled pork and kind of
I
stuff.
actually kind of wanted to mention that because you take a look on the website and obviously you're there because the principal, you've got your brewmaster up there, but you've also got your pitmaster up there. You kind of have him as equal billing.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I'm proud of our brisket. I think it's really fantastic, and kind of there's, in my opinion, different sort of waves in the barbecue movement, and we're sort of on a new wave right now where everybody's really trying to perfect like these traditional styles of barbecue, but then also kind of push the edge and make new, interesting smoked food like smoked oysters or something like that. So we're doing a lot of that. We're smoking our own bacon now, we're doing lots of interesting things there. So. But anyway, I say as far as the Texas side goes, I think that's about as much of it I bring to the table. It doesn't really show up in the beer so much. I would like to make a good Shiner Bock, though. That would be great. But,
I've got such good memories of Shiner. Downtown Fort Worth. Gotta love it.
Yeah, that was probably the first craft beer I ever had, if I think about it. But other than that, as far as the beer goes, we're really trying to tailor it to Hialeah, specifically, less Hialeah Light, and, the state of Florida in general. That's why we have like salt and lime lager,
which is what I'm drinking, which is fantastic and light and perfect.
Yeah, but it's a good beach beer, and then guava wheat is obviously also kind of a, Hialeah or Cuban reference because guava is very prominent in their cuisine. So, yeah.
And then obviously you've got the space. Well, let's talk about the space for a little bit because you've got this giant facility that you have yet to come close to finishing up everything.
Yeah, we got lots of room for expansion.
But even with the tap room, first of all, there's a lot of greenery here.
Yeah.
And it seems to be something that you don't get in the standard traditional industrial style tap room.
I do the vines on the outside. That's always been a plan. And then about a year ago, Lance, my business partner, also the ops manager, I was just in the tap room one day and he was just like, you know what, we need some more damn plants in here. And he just went to Home Depot and literally bought all these ferns and he waters them all the time and keeps them going. So he does the inside, I do the outside. But yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And you've also got a lending library, it looks like. I've never seen that in a brewery before.
Yeah, my architect, because I was a philosophy major and, PhD at the time, she was just like, oh, okay, I'll put in some bookshelves. He'll like that. And she put in some bookshelves. I was like, yeah, cool. And, kind of idea is this side of the tap room's a little more like sit down, read, relax. We got some coloring books for kids. Got some games, some domino tables, It's more of the chill out section. But, yeah, we just went to one of the thrift stores over here in Flamingo Plaza, just half a block away, and just bought out their entire selection of books. And we're like, hey, can we get all of your books? And they're like, all of them? And I was like, yeah, all of them. And they're like, all right, it'll be like $50. And I was like, okay.
It is kind of amazing. And one of the things that you showed us, which is still a little used from the last event, is you've got your
right.
own event space in the back.
Yeah, we have a nice event space. And people always don't clean up after themselves. So they say they'll be back the next day, but they don't.
Now, let's keep in mind, this is not garbage. This is not beer cans. This is a bed.
Yeah.
And a lot of drapery.
Drapery, exactly.
And mirrors.
A few chairs, Yeah.
Mirrors with phrases written on them in red lipstick.
Yeah. We had a music event, so it was, kind of, I guess you could call it a rave. But yeah, basically had like, EDM blasting and, light shows and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of weird stuff back there.
Is that just par for the course here, or is it mostly like quinces and birthdays and quiet things?
It's mainly that, yeah. Mainly like, birthdays and, baby showers and that sort of thing.
Don't forget the wrestling matches that happen in the back, too.
Yeah. No, we got the once a month.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. We have once a month, we have an amateur wrestling night. CCW is the organization that puts it on. Nelio's the owner. He's a good guy. And basically they come in and in the back, we have a big open area behind the brew house, and they build an entire stage, wrestle for like 3 or 4 hours and then tear the whole stage down and leave. But
I don't remember where you were when we talked about that back there, Dave, but you missed that whole conversation.
It was probably with my 6-year-old daughter. But yeah, interesting.
They're great. There's a local bar called Union Beer Store, and they're very wrestling themed, and they joke with us all the time that we stole their idea. But yeah.
Once again, I will admit that when I think of Hialeah, wrestling is not one of those things that comes to mind.
Yeah, but the funny thing is like it's mainly a locals night. Like when we have it, like, yeah, the fire department of the city of Hialeah shows up. Like 10 guys from the fire department just show up, and they're on the front row, like throwing beer cans in the ring and stuff. And like, it's funny.
I feel we need to get out here for one of these nights.
I feel I know the owner of that particular promotion, shall we say.
Yeah.
So beer cans is a good segue into the breadth of how far Unbranded has gone, because you are pretty much statewide at this point, correct?
Yeah, we are all over the state of Florida, and we're opening up in other states. Georgia, Maryland very soon, Georgia soon, and then South and North Carolina after that. So,
was that always part of the plan? Was that always something that you wanted?
Yeah, that's why we have such a large brew house. Is we were always going to be kind of a widely distributed brand. It's tough to open a regional brewery these days, but I think if you have the right kind of branding and good product, it's still possible.
Was that difficult to because a lot of people understand Miami, but when they say Miami, you think of Miami Beach, right? Maybe the area around whatever the arena that the Heat play in now is called. Is it a difficult sell to go to, Tampa? I was in Tampa last week. I saw, cans of Hialeah Light on the shelves. Is that a difficult sell?
I think the city of Hialeah is well known in South Florida, but yeah, I think like outside of South Florida, it's a little less known. And so generally speaking, we tell our sales reps and whatnot to just refer to us as being in Miami whenever they're outside of that area,
And I assume that works pretty well, and you're getting some buzz.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows what Miami's like, and like you were saying earlier, not many people think of beer even when they think of Miami. So, saying that you're a brewery from Miami, people are like, "Oh, really? Like that's interesting."
So we've talked about Hialeah Light, and obviously that's the main beer that you have in distribution right now. But I know that you have 3 other core beers, judging by the serving tanks that you have in your taproom walk-up. What are the other core beers, and are you finding those, or are you pushing those into distribution the same way that you are with Hialeah Light?
The only other one that I would say is like on a par or close with Hialeah Light in terms of just total volume being moved is our American Wheat Ale with guava puree added to it. We tend to try to keep the name simple since we're called Unbranded, don't really want to name our beers, just describe them. So yeah, guava wheat, that one's really great. And then, like I said, the other brands that are cores but don't move quite as much of is Salt and Lime Lager, our hazy, which is just a hazy IPA. We're recently doing like a series on that, but then stopped it, and now we just have a stable hazy that we make all the time. And then we actually have a seltzer line too, with 3 different flavors, are all like natural purees.
I saw the seltzer line, and you were doing a lot with champagne yeast.
Yeah. So basically, what it is just Belgian candy sugar that's been fermented with champagne yeast. That's the core one. And we used to call it Champagne Room. Now we just call it Champagne Seltzer or Champagne Style Seltzer. Still waiting on approval there. And basically, the other 2 flavors are Mandarin Orange and Lime and Mixed Berry.
How well do those move?
They move pretty well. We're not distroing them yet because we're still working on getting them shelved. We had a few of them pop couple weeks ago, and we were like, okay, yeah, we don't want this sitting on warm shelves. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Just going to try and hit it with some more metabisulfate or something.
So obviously, Miami-Dade is not a traditional beer community, but you've been here for a couple of years. You've continued to watch it grow. How has the face of craft beer been in this county?
I think so. Like I moved here, 12 years ago. And when I got here, I remember just being shocked that there wasn't a single craft brewery. There wasn't one.
Was Titanic even open then?
Titanic was. So I guess a distribution brewery, right? A production facility. Like, yes, I didn't mean to throw Titanic under the bus.
But no, I guess, I mean, I would assume that even most people in Miami-Dade don't actually know that Titanic even exists. Have you been there yet?
Since I was going to UM, that was where we would go all the time. Because it's right across the street.
It's right there.
All the grad students would go over there. So
anyway. Do you have Titanic? You've got the Abbey in Miami Beach.
Yeah, Abbey, but they were brewing up in like Jupiter or something like that. And then
they were in Cape Canaveral, actually.
Yeah, that's
getting a distro down to them.
And then they would distro down to themselves in Miami Beach. So.
But that was it.
That was it.
Yeah, that's it.
And it's been neat to see over these past 12 years, all these breweries start popping up, right? Like Wynwood, I think, was kind of the first production brewery that opened up. And, they've obviously done very well for themselves. And then if I remember correctly, MIA was the next one. And then, you just kind of saw this big explosion after that. Several more breweries opened up in Wynwood, and then several other breweries elsewhere. J. Wakefield, Tripping Animals. Some of the big guys started opening up breweries here. Sam Adams opened up Concrete Beach, Then the real big guys, AB InBev, opened up Vesa Sur. Heineken opened up La Tropical. That's the one unfortunate thing I would say about the Miami beer scene is that about half of the breweries are like mega corporations. Yeah, they're not like actually true independent, craft breweries.
But there's enough strong regional breweries that have finally opened up. Yeah. You mentioned MIA, you got the Tank.
Tripping
Animals. Yeah, there's a lot of hype down here as well.
Yeah. There's a lot of hype. I think the two biggest hype breweries are Tripping Animals and J. Wakefield. They're the ones that like everybody's foaming at the mouth to get their cans right when they're released and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Are you still confident and happy that you decided on Hialeah? Has this been the right move for you?
Yeah, I like being, Hialeah's craft brewery. There is another one that just recently opened, King Fox, but they're not quite mass producing beer. But yeah, no, it's nice to be, the Hialeah brand, and got a great relationship with the city. They help us out now that we got through the approval process. They help us out with all kinds of, like block parties and stuff. We have shut down the street in front of the brewery all the time and have big turnouts and whatnot. So still very happy about deciding on Hialeah.
Yeah. So I guess my last question, my most important question, my most ridiculous question is, since you have a smokehouse, are we going to start smoking some malts and doing some rock beers?
Oh yeah, I actually did smoke some malt once, and in collaboration with Lincoln's Beard. This was before we opened, and they had I think there was a 7-barrel system, and I made enough malt out of one of my smokers for like maybe 5% of the grist or something like that. And it turned out really great. Didn't sell so well. But
I was going to say it's a wonderful style, and it does not move. Yeah. Very few people says it moves for them.
Yeah, we called it Smokey and the Bandit, and people just weren't.
Of course you did. It's weird.
Yeah, people just weren't feeling it, but I liked it. It was great.
Awesome. Hopefully, you'll be able to try one of that. Yeah. Smelling what's going on in the back is
something kind special.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Nice to meet you guys.
Let me start by saying that, yes, I understand in the intro I mentioned Dark Souls. It was, in fact, Elden Ring that they were playing. Both of them came from the same game manufacturer. Both of them are exceptionally difficult, and both of them are games that I will not touch with a 10-foot cattle prod. Anyways, thank you so much to Zach. I do appreciate his time. Hopefully, we will be able to get the rest of our time in Hialeah in a very soon episode. It's actually going to be a 2-parter, but there's going to be some other stuff that's coming pretty soon. Hopefully that'll be released on a timely basis. And if you do want to know when they are released, remember to like and subscribe to this podcast, leave a review, follow us on social media. You know the drill. Anyways, thank you so much for listening. This is Dave signing off for today. We will be back next week with all sorts of awesome craft beer goodness. And don't forget, drink Florida Craft.